Since our last annual meeting, Jehovah has directed his people in many different ways, reflecting his love and wisdom. Of course, the most significant occurrence is that we've welcomed back thousands who had been removed from the congregation. And certainly there has been great joy in heaven, but here on earth as well. We're delighted to have these dear ones back with us once again. Wouldn't you agree? The next part of our program relates to the remarkable response we've seen to Jehovah's mercy expressed to those who had been removed from the congregation. It's a video entitled Blessings of Jehovah's Mercy. Please enjoy.
It's heartwarming to hear reports of how Jehovah has blessed congregation elders as they search for those who have been removed from the congregation. For example, in the first 4 months after the 2024 Governing Body Update Number 2, in the South Africa and Philippines branch territories combined, more than 1,200 have come back to the congregation. Here in the United States branch territory, over 5,000 brothers and sisters have been welcomed back. In the Brazil branch territory, some 5,200 publishers have been reinstated. And in the Central America branch territory, over 5,300 individuals have come back to the congregation. The numbers are exciting, but we can't overlook that each of these dear ones have returned to Jehovah, and Jehovah loves them.
So that was Gary Bro speaking in a special video being shown at this year's 2024 annual meeting on the subject of shunning, or the new approach that's being taken for Jehovah's Witnesses who were removed from the congregation. A special effort is now being made to reach out to those ones who were removed and encourage them to return. And I personally find it interesting that when they're talking about numbers, they're talking about like the first few months after the changes were announced, which is when you would think there would be the largest influx of Jehovah's Witnesses or ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who wanted to come back, then suddenly having an opportunity. And don't get me wrong, these are some big numbers, but we're still only talking, a few thousand here or there. Bear in mind, this is an organization of nearly 9 million. So a few thousand here or there is similar to what you would be expecting anyway in terms of baptisms, isn't it really? It's not it's not like a seismic shift in the number of Jehovah's Witnesses. So I can't help but wonder whether the organization might be feeling a little bit disappointed that there weren't more people who wanted to return to the fold.
One person had been removed from the congregation some 17 years ago, and on his own, he was watching JW Broadcasting. He saw the update. He said, "This is it's time to come home." Mm-hmm. And so he called the Kingdom Hall. He left a voicemail, and the brothers received his message. They reached right out to him. A Bible study was started, and very happily, he too has progressed to being reinstated, and his parents were able to fly in and be there at the Kingdom Hall that night. He was reinstated. He later said, "This is truly a homecoming."
I feel like it helps us to see another side of Jehovah as our Father. And you see how much he loves his children. And then he allows us to have a part in helping them to come back to him. And so we get to reflect his mercy too. It's such a privilege.
It's really noteworthy how emotional some of these testimonials are. The people telling these stories are getting choked up when they're describing removed Jehovah's Witnesses or disfellowshipped Jehovah's Witnesses returning, even in cases where it doesn't seem they're talking about their own family members, they're still getting choked up on camera. I feel there's some interesting psychology going on here. It's almost as though on some perhaps subconscious level, Jehovah's Witnesses recognize how cruel shunning is, so they will leap on any example of shunning ceasing, of shunning ending, as a reason for joy and elation and getting all teary-eyed. And I thought that story of the man who was reinstated and his family flying in to be at the meeting where he was reinstated, doesn't that just show the impact that shunning is having? You know, these are parents who previously will have been having nothing whatsoever to do with their son, who will have spent years treating their son as though he is dead. And all of a sudden, because of a technicality, because of some new light that means that it's easier for him to get reinstated, all of a sudden he gets to get the thumbs up from the organization and from his local elders, and then they can book a flight, and then they can come and sit next to their son and treat him like a normal human being. It is so profoundly messed up.
Back in 1979, my father was removed from the congregation, and I was 8. You can grow up thinking, okay, maybe, my dad will come back in a decade goes by, 2 decades goes by, 3 decades goes by, and you don't want to lose hope, but it does tend to make you think that maybe this person might not ever come back. I get a phone call, and it's a friend of mine I've known for many years. He and another brother went to go see my dad, and he even accepted a study. At this point, I said, wow. I said, that's great, because most of my childhood and my entire adult life, I have not known a father who was serving Jehovah. You should never, ever underestimate the lengths Jehovah will go to save one sheep. One sheep. So, yeah, it's... Yeah, it's, If you weren't a believer in Jehovah's mercy before, no one will ever be able to say, when everything is over in the system of things, that Jehovah didn't care enough. He didn't make the efforts. He didn't send anybody out. You really can't say that, because Jehovah's making sure that the extra effort was made.
Very touching indeed. But it wasn't just a one-time invitation. In imitation of our Father Jehovah, the elders continue to try to render assistance to those who have been removed from the congregation. They continue to reach out to them.
Wasn't that an extraordinary moment at the annual meeting? That, for me, was the part where I was trawling through the 3+ hours of footage. That was the moment where I kind of sat up and thought, oh. I've not seen that before. I've not seen a governing body member get visibly emotional on stage to the point where he just kind of shuts down and needs to gather himself and needs to be kind of urged on by the audience. So I would love to know the backstory there. I would love to know whether maybe that last story that was related about the father who got reinstated, I'd love to know whether that touched a nerve with Gage Fleegle, or whether Gage Fleegle has perhaps another family member or someone else who's close to him that he is being forced to shun. And just hearing those stories made it difficult for him to just go straight into hosting mode as soon as the video montage was over. So fascinating moment. And doesn't it show that the governing body members, they're not necessarily just robots. You know, they do some evil things. They allow abuse, child abuse, to be covered up on an industrial scale, and they are aware of how much abuse there is, and they are keeping it covered up, Gage Fleegle included. They are overseeing the needless deaths of Jehovah's Witnesses who are refusing blood transfusions that could save their lives. So, you know, this does not by any means give Gage Fleegle a free pass. But as I've repeatedly argued on this channel, the situation is nuanced. It's not a case of black or white, cynical or completely deluded. There are shades in between, and I feel as though what we've seen there is a very rare glimpse into the humanity, dare I say it, of a governing body member. Will we ever know the full backstory there? Will we ever know what it was that caused Gage Fleegle to just pause for a moment? Unlikely. But nonetheless, there it is on camera, and it really wouldn't surprise me if they edit the final annual meeting that goes out on JW Broadcasting so that that isn't shown, because I think it would be awkward if they were to include that, and they have been known to edit annual meetings to get rid of awkward parts before. Maybe I could be wrong. We'll see. I'll happily eat my words if they keep that in. But yeah, just the story as well of the guy who talks about his father being reinstated after decades. And he's saying things like, how can anyone say that Jehovah isn't merciful, you know? Jehovah put forth all of this effort just for one sheep, and no one can say that Jehovah doesn't try. And I'm sorry, mate, I can't be on board with you there, because you should never have been severed from your father, or you should never have had your relationship with your father interfered with in that way. I'm sure there wasn't full shunning for the full period that he was disfellowshipped or removed, because he describes his father getting removed at the age of 8. So probably his father was still able to speak to him for a few years, but certainly once he was old enough to leave home, he would have been expected to treat his father like he was dead. And that's disgusting. There's no excuse for that sort of behavior. And I'm not surprised that he's getting all emotional now, that he's being given permission by the organization to have a relationship with his father again. But does this make the Jehovah's Witness religion a shining beacon of God's mercy? Absolutely not.